theater and the usher nods me in. They know me here. I descend down the staircase behind the movie screen that only select people know about. The door at the bottom opens and I walk in. The sound of movie spoilers fill the air. The barkeep has my drink ready and motions me to the back. The rest of the crew are here already. This is my type of place, and these are my type of people. Join me as we discuss the inner secrets of cinema. Have a seat in the spoiler room.
Welcome, everyone, to the spoiler room. I appreciate you coming down the stairs and joining us tonight. And I have two special guest crew members with me to discuss Italian horror from 1980. We're going to be talking about Nightmare City, a.k.a. City of the Walking Dead. And first off, I have from the Horror Retrospective YouTube channel. She is a horror reviewer, and we welcome Kara tonight. Or is it Kara? I apologize. Is it Kara or Kara?
I go by Kara, but I'm not picky about it.
Okay, well, I'll make sure to say Kara. I want to pronounce it correctly. But how are you doing tonight, Kara?
Doing okay, pretty good.
Great. Well, I'm glad you could join us to talk about this rather interesting film. And next to Kara, we have the horror miser himself. He also has a YouTube channel out there, does horror reviews as well as other movie reviews, but he definitely is a man who loves horror, and it is Lamont. Hello, Lamont. How are you doing, sir?
Pretty good, pretty good. Never had a bad day in my life.
That's great. If you get any extra good days, slide them my way, because I could use a couple. But yes, last week we looked at a film called Zombie Nightmare. And so today we are looking at Nightmare City from, it was originally released in 1980. I believe it was in 83 when it was released as City of the Walking Dead in the US, but it is brought to us by the director Umberto Lenzi, who he directed Cannibal Ferox as well as many other Italian horror films. And basically this one is about a plane that has been exposed to radiation, and the inhabitants inside become basically infected with radiation. And we have a reporter who is supposed to meet a doctor who's on this plane, but instead of the doctor coming off the plane, we have a bunch of irradiated, infected people who go on a murderous rampage and biting their victims. And some victims who are bitten stand up and they go on a murderous rampage. And we see how this spreads throughout the city, causing chaos and mayhem, not only with the public, but also with the military. Now, this film, oh, man. First, I want to get your guys' impressions when you first saw the film. So, Kara, when did you first see this film, and what was your initial feeling with it?
To me, it just kind of seemed like, I guess, one of those typical Italian films, like doesn't really have a clear plot flow, just kind of discombobulated a little bit. So it's at least here and there, at least kind of like, I don't know, it's weird, like to a degree, it half reminds me of House by the Cemetery.
Sure.
They're way different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is definitely your standard Italian horror. Lamont, how about you? Do you remember when you first saw this and your kind of initial feelings with it?
Yeah, I actually saw this on one of the many VHS tapes that I used to go to in South Philly called Earl's Video Store. And of course, being a horror fan, I actually just picked it up. I said, "Oh wow, I gotta watch this one." And I'm looking at it, I'm like, "God damn, how bad this movie looks!" Because back then I didn't know anything about dubbing and anything like that, or Italian horror. I just happen to remember how. It was so bad and so good, and I was having a good time laughing at it. My mother she says, "Monty, where'd you get this crap from?" I said, "Got it from the video store." I said, because obviously now that I understand how Italian horror and then Gallo pictures and stuff like that, so I get a better perspective of what the film was trying to do. But just like Kara said, it's combobulated. You really have to try to understand because obviously the translation between if you watch a dub version, the translation doesn't come off very well. It's like, damn, I've seen better dubbing in Ultraman's TV shows or the Space Giants. It's okay. It is what it is. It's just whether you have to. That's how they filmed it back in the day.
Yeah, it is how they filmed it, especially for Italian horror. And the quality that they were shooting us on. I mean, because back then we're still talking film here. That they're shooting us on, so it's not the highest of budgets for it either. But you still get a lot of those, what I find interesting, elements that you get in especially early horror where they're trying to make a statement. Like, we got our main character, Dean Miller here, who, I mean, I think it's within the first 5 minutes, he's spouting, what about the freedom of the press?
That was funny about it. What about freedom of the press?
I'm like, wow, could you be any more on the nose? I mean, and he has some dialogue further, which we'll talk about too, because we'll kind of jump around the movie a bit, because I'm sure it's been talked about, by other folks as well, who break down every scene by scene, but this guy, they use him kind of as the voice of, it feels like the director, not only as anti-military, anti-government control, but also voice of the press. And basically he felt like the voice of the director. Lamont, did you feel that way with our reporter Dean Miller, that he was kind of the voice of the director through this film?
Yeah, it seemed like he was the main guy that was trying to explain what the hell was going on. I guess that's what the best way we can describe his character was, because because back then I'm still trying to figure out what I had a basic idea what was happening, because this type of film reminded me of some of the 50 horror pictures that I've seen. You have because after then you had the atomic scare, so you had all these radiation things, whether it turned tarantulas into giant tarantulas, or it turned this man into a 60-foot man or a 50-foot woman. So that's where I got the gist from. So and I think that's what he was trying to use. The director was trying to use this reporter as his voice.
Yeah. And, Kara, how about you? Did you feel kind of like Dean Miller was the voice, and was this a little too on the nose for the social commentary of the time?
I think and I don't know if it was intentional, but I guess I kind of lean more towards George Romero in that whole aspect, where zombie films are just kind of treated more as social commentary, where you're actually commenting on whether it's the, bureaucracy or government policy or something. But it just kind of feels like that was like the whole thing, kind of like, what was it when he tried to put on the last minute news bulletin, trying to let people know what was going on, and they just hushed him up right away.
Yeah, it does. You feel the Romero influence in this. It felt like he was trying to do his own Night of the Living Dead in many. I know it's zombies. It's not zombies. It's radiated people, but these are zombies. Come on. And it does have a lot of influence. You could tell from Romero, because what was it? Dawn of the Dead had come out, because this was originally released in 1980. So Dawn of the Dead had just come out, I think, a couple years before then or whatnot. Yeah. And it really felt like he was borrowing from Romero quite a bit, though we do have fast zombies in here. I think this is the first time we've had fast zombies in a horror film. Kara, do you think this is kind of the first instance, do you think, of fast zombies, and what did you think of our Infected?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of thinking that, because forever and ever I always thought like the whole 28 Days Later was the first fast zombie, but these guys were like the fast zombie, the thinking zombie. What surprised me is they can still drive vehicles, or they can still use firearms or whatever.
They were far more sophisticated than your Romero schlepping zombie, that's for sure. I mean, they could use tools as well, and it seemed like they even had strategy for some things. Lamont, how'd you feel about our zombies in this? The irradiated people.
Yeah, that took me a bit by surprise. I says, wow, these zombies, they can think. I said they were running, they're stabbing, they can actually hold guns and fire. That really that's what got me interested in the film. When they come out the plane, all of a sudden, they're attacking people, they're stabbing people, they're running. I said, these are not the zombies that I'm familiar with. I said, well, maybe they're not zombies. I said, it can't be. But even though they were still biting people, but they were more likely, because there's this one scene I remember that they're, I think they're somewhere, and this one affected person is just literally just stabbing shit out of this one woman. I said, damn, that's terrible. He said, but a zombie knows how to use a knife. That was really. I guess that's the reason why I really liked the film, because it was something totally different than I expect. Now, obviously, of course. Now we have 28 Days Later. We have the remake of Dawn of the Dead. Now, keep in mind, I always tell people that in 28 Days Later, those are not zombies. They're just infected with the AIDS virus.
Right. And that's what we kind of have here, because it is 80s, Cold War. I mean, it hasn't changed in 30 years for horror. One of the big fears is still nuclear radiation. So these are irradiated people. They aren't technically infected zombie folks. They are, even though they have a lot of those, some of those traits, and then we do have them fast moving, though I kind of thought they looked more like casting rejects for a Toxic Avenger film.
I know, yes. Later on, it's like, God damn it. Because I'm saying to myself, those are bad makeup effects.
Yeah. They mostly looked like they had been burned or something, but I don't know how that translates to infection.
Yeah, I couldn't quite make the connection either of, okay, I understand they're irradiated and infected. Then if they're radiation, why would they even need to bite the people? If you would get, I thought maybe if you got close enough to the person, you just get infected. I think that might have been a little bit better way to go with it than the whole blood thing. But then, you can get some of those wonderful scenes where they stab someone and then immediately just start sucking on the wound. Which, I'm like, okay, it added for some interesting scenes, but so we've got our reporter in here, and then we've got a lot of soldier characters.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, wow. And these aren't really the best generals and soldiers that we have. Cara, what would you think of the soldier characters in this film?
I think they're just as clueless as everyone else, is the way it comes off to me. It's just I don't know. Especially if you've got a guy who's not even paying attention, and you've got a zombie that gets the drop on him or whatever, when he's supposed to be trained to know better.
Yeah, it's like they were also trying to make a statement about the military not being prepared for, say, a true threat. With this, maybe that's what they're going for. Or am I reading too much into that, Lamont, or are these just inept soldiers?
I just thought they were inept soldiers, because I come from a military family, and my father was in the Navy, my brother was in the Air Force. So to me, they just came off as inept soldiers. It's like there's simply no way in the world that these are real military men. So that I just thought that maybe I guess they're trying to maybe some poor attempt at comedy or something like that. I don't know if that's what the whole purpose of making these guys so stupid for. No, especially like Kara said, that scene where you think a soldier's more prepared to deal with a person that's attacking him, and then like you let the zombie get the drop on him. It's like, well, damn, that's dumb.
Well, yeah, I mean, right there at the beginning of the film, they're surrounding this plane. The two guys open the door, and suddenly the zombies come pouring out. They should have just killed them all right there, but these zombies with only axes and knives take out an entire platoon of guys on the runway. And you're just like, really? And then I loved our reporter. It's good to know reporters haven't gotten much smarter though over the decades, because you still had the cameraman and reporter filming like all of this bloodshed and carnage when they came pouring out of the plane. I couldn't believe. I'm like, oh well, at least some things haven't changed with reporters in horror films. But our Dean Miller character, he does have a wife, Dr. Ann Miller, who this was an interesting relationship. Lamont, what did you think of Ann Miller? And in fact, the majority of the female characters. I mean, it is a 1980 film, so there are kind of those weaknesses in the writing of female characters. But what did you think of the female presence in this film?
Oh boy. And it's sad too, because I want it, because as much as I respect women, and I don't understand. I guess because it was the time, we didn't have any of the progressive women movement back in. Even the 80s, you would still think they would show some respect for some of the women, especially in film. But again, it's just like, that's it. That's all we're going to get. Another, I'm trying to, if I remember correctly, I don't know if she was if they do the usual damsel in distress cliche like they always do in some of these movies, because I'm trying to remember that, because it's been a while since I've seen it, but I think, in most of these pictures, we always have these damsels in distress moments.
Yeah, there is. And Kara, how about you? How'd you feel about, you watch a lot of older horror films. How'd you feel of the female representation in this film?
It's kind of hard not to feel nitpicky, because they all seem kind of like how Lamont said, they're all written as, I guess, to some degree, a cliche, like especially when they're coming off with lines. I forget who it was that had called, and they warned their wife to stay indoors, and
yeah,
she's like, well, you don't tell me what to do, and he's like, this isn't some jealousy thing, woman, just listen to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I caught that dialogue, and I'm like, well, this is definitely from a different time period. Sure. I mean, and along with those lines, not only do you have that going on, with those characters, but I mean, his wife was a doctor, but in the end, she still she was not a strong character. Everyone in here seemed to, any of the female characters seemed to really fall victim. I mean, you get a scene in there too where it's two of the female characters, they're in a house, and the one comes over and goes, yeah, I tried to barricade everything, including the door to the cellar. Yeah. And she's like, oh, I forgot that. I'm like,
oh God.
I'm like, really? I'm like, and she goes down there, and then it gets worse with them, because they go down there and she goes, oh, it was open. Well, it's closed now. There can't be anybody down here, can there? La. Oh, they're surprised. Someone is down. I'm just like, oh, come on, give them some sense.
It could just be me, but and I'm so bad with names, I can't remember the characters' names.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, I want to say, like Dr. Miller, the wife, she, to some degree, and maybe it's just my misinterpretation, but she kind of seemed kind of standoffish, like there was some underlying thing going on between husband and wife. Like she just kind of seemed to be avoiding him. Like, I don't want to talk to you. I'm not doing anything, but let's just lie and say I'm busy.
Yeah. Yeah. It did seem like their relationship was strained, though, with unfortunately how weak the script is to this, you don't really get anything more than that. So you kind of have to draw your own conclusion. But yeah, that's kind of the impression I got too, was their relationship was a bit strained. Maybe because she's a doctor and he's just a reporter, in her eyes, maybe. I'm not sure what the whole deal with that was either. Lamont, what about you? Did you pick up that their relationship may have been strange?
Yeah. I just felt this though, because I'm looking at the movie and I'm like, well, why she's mad at him? But the film doesn't go into any aspects of their relationship, other than the fact that she's a doctor, he's a lawyer, she's upset with him for some reason, but the film doesn't explore that. That's one of the problems you have with some of these old-fashioned movies, especially they don't have any time for character development.
Yeah, there is, and and it's one of those things too where we all look at it. We watch enough movies, you go, all you need is one or two sentences at most, to give the impression, okay, either he cheated or she doesn't like it because he's schlepping, as not such a great reporter or whatnot, and but we don't get any of that. But whatever relationship they have, straining. It gets healed up, obviously, as they move along and escape in the ambulance to this gas station scene, which really felt like it was ripped from a Romero film.
Oh, yes.
Lamont, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about, if you remember, the gas station scene where they pull up into the gas station and it's empty? I mean, this feels right from Romero.
Oh, yeah. That's my first thought about this. It's like, what the hell? I just saw this on Night of the Living Dead. It's like, come on, guys, show some originality. I know I rented. No, I didn't rent that film, but that's the first thing that hit me was, Night of the Living Dead, and it's like, no originality whatsoever.
No, it wasn't at all. And Cara, did you feel too that this scene was kind of reminiscent quite a bit of the Romero zombie film?
I think it's probably just a little too generalized to where you can maybe just compare it to just about any abandoned building type scene. But I know I've also run across the comparison where I guess just another Romero film where a lot of people say that this one's also similar to The Crazies.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It does have kind of that vibe as well, the way the story is told. The original Crazies, which that was actually it's a film. I like that film all right. It actually was. I enjoyed the remake a little bit better, most of it, except for maybe that ending for the remake. But yeah, it does have a Crazies feel to it. And then in that gas station too, we get that wonderful exposition where again we have the screenwriter and director too on the nose, I think, with their message of anti-nuclear power. And well, there's a line in there, I think, where maybe we'll get more healthy and avoid things like Coke and nuclear energy. And I'm like, Coke? Wait, how do you equate Coke with nuclear energy? But again, we get that whole exposition in there with the fault of man and technology, which really, Cara, is a theme that shows up for many years, but especially through horror, not just here. But what do you think of scenes like this where you kind of just get this exposition of them giving the message? Do you think that's kind of too in your face and blunt for even for a simple horror film? Or do you think that it has its place?
I think it's at least with this particular film, I think it's just very hit or miss because they could have made a very strong statement and they just kind of schlepped a whole bunch of things together. But I think it's been, I think a common theme, I guess, among horror for years is that directors, writers, it's easier to sneak in more serious themes because no one pays attention to horror except for the fans. Mm-hmm. So if somebody actually does have a statement to make, they can actually say what they need to say without actually running the risk of I guess just being singled out, so they can avoid Big Brother but still say what they actually intended to say and not have to mask it over so much, like, oh, there's this monster, that's the government.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if people don't pick up in Godzilla, the original Godzilla, that Godzilla is the threat of the H-bomb, you're totally missing it. It's kind of in your face. But Lamont, how about you with a horror film? I mean, because this dialogue in here is really on the nose, but you think that, like Cara said, they can kind of get away with it because they know their audience, and so they don't necessarily have to beat around the bush or whatnot for their to get their message through.
Yeah, because normally a person they believe that a general person going to see a horror film is just going to see it for the gore, and the blood, and obviously, unfortunately, no, especially during the '80s, during the slasher film, naked women. That's basically what they think the average audience is going to see. They're not going to pay any attention to any subliminal messages that's going to be put in there. And that's one of the things I didn't like about the first Purge, because it was too much anti-45 in that movie. I mean, it's like, come on. It's like, okay, guys, you don't like who, we get it, but I don't want a bunch of that propaganda. I just want to see a nice, decent horror picture. I don't need all that extra political messages in the film.
Or if you do have that, just do it briefly and then move on, right?
Do it briefly, and that's fine, okay? But I don't need all that other stuff in there. But that it's just like I said, during the 50s, when we saw all those other pictures, like whether it was Godzilla or Tarantula or the Attack of the Praying Mantis, the message was nuclear weapons are bad, or you're going to have a giant lizard attack you, or you're going to have these giant insects are going to come up against man.
Yeah, and man's going to lose.
Yeah.
Man does not usually come out well at the end of whatever battle it is with those creatures. It's funny you brought up the first Purge, because just as a side note, that was a movie where I wish they would have just stuck with more of the Purge stuff on the street. You could have cut out the whole back scene in the control room in that completely and not lose a thing in that film. So, and in this film, yeah, you're right. People, they kind of know who their audience is for this, and especially in 80s Italian horror, it has a lot of those tropes. And you did mention it, Lamont, the gratuitous nudity in here, which it gets ridiculous in this film. Now, I understand that it kind of comes with the genre and the time that it comes out, but there's times when the top is on, and like there's a scene in the basement where we were talking about, where the zombie's in there, and he attacks the one girl or the one woman, and she has her top kind of on. We cut to a zombie, and then we cut back, and it's just gone. It's just gone.
And it really serves no purpose in the movie other than just, hey, look, women's breasts, yeah, that doesn't serve. Come on, guys.
I mean, it's always that question though of how much or how little. But here, it adds absolutely. It makes no sense. Why are they, if they're ravenous killers, they're stabbing some, and of course it's just the women. I mean, if these guys were ripping off the clothes of the guys too, at least you get equal clothes ripping going on in here. But but that's one trope that I never quite understood with some of these. Well, I mean, I understand why they put it in there, but none of the nudity really made sense in this movie at all. I mean, and we've all watched a lot of especially old school horror, and so it's probably going to be in there. But I mean, Kara, would you agree that it really served no purpose whatsoever outside of just being exploitation?
I guess it's kind of like you said, just part of the era. Everybody's kind of like, free love, let it fly, woo.
Even in the zombie film, just let it fly. Yeah, I was like, the one scene was really, it was so blatant though. It was like, just the clothing just evaporated. I'm like, there's not even like evidence that it was ripped or anything, just gone. And I'm like, wow, all right, can you be any more obvious?
I know, yeah.
Sometimes it works in there where you're going, okay, I could see, but other times you're like, no, not really. Yeah, that's just completely. Yeah, I mean, we don't really get any. They try to give you some character depth in this film, but it really doesn't work at all. It's got a large cast though. Surprisingly, Kara, does it surprise you the scope for the budget that this film's on, the scope that it takes? Because there's a lot of people and action like set pieces in this, more so than what we might see normally in a lower budget film like this?
I think it's pretty balanced out because you have kind of like a lot of scenes that could just easily have been sets or someone's bedroom or somewhere, kind of like you have the cellar or the TV station. I mean, so it's very easy, I think, at least to repurpose some of that and at least to a degree convince the audience, well, this is a different room. We haven't been here before, but
Yeah,
it's different dressing.
How about the amount of people though that are in this film? I mean, for the type of film, it's got a huge cast of extras and such in it. Is that surprising, or do you think that's kind of standard too for the film of the age?
I would say at least for that time period, especially because you've got Hugo Stiglitz, who, I mean, I know he's more of like an international actor. You've got some people who, I guess, to some degree, just via partnership between different countries, they pull their money together, and you've got like that cross appeal there. So I think it was more easy for them to pull something off like that when you have numerous studios or producers working together, especially when they're mostly backing whenever there's a big name in the film. They're more willing to ante up, and it helps the film. It just didn't help the plot.
We got all this great stuff. Unfortunately, the script sucks. Well, we got all these people. I guess we're going to need a script, aren't we? Damn. We see that in a lot of I think European horror, though, especially the age. But even now, if you watch a foreign horror film, how many production companies are involved usually in ones with especially larger cast? I mean, Lamont, how'd you feel about the scope of this film and the amount of people that are actually in this kind of low budget Italian horror film?
It really didn't surprise me because at the time I'd seen this, I saw Zombie. As well, and of course, obviously, Suspiria and a few other Italian Gallo horror films. So it didn't really surprise me about the amount of people that were in this film, because just like Kara said, they probably pulled their resources together to get a lot of people in this film. So it didn't surprise me at all. But unfortunately, like I said, it didn't help with the plot.
Yeah, it doesn't. We'll distract them. We'll just throw lots of bodies and blood at them and some nudity, and no one will pay attention to the plot that's not there. Especially the ending. They sew JR in the shower ending this.
Don't remind me of that.
Lamont,
you want to talk about, not to go off topic, but
no, that's okay.
One of the worst decisions ever. It was all a dream. That's the best you could come up with. Oh, please. Not that I was a huge fan of Dallas to begin with, but that oh boy.
Yeah, an entire season was a dream. And Lamont, we get that here. So I take it this ending didn't quite sit well with you either then.
No. It's like, that's it? You guys couldn't come with anything better than that? And to me, it's a cop-out when the writer just doesn't have any other way to end the story because he can't come up with a great conclusion. So he just cops out.
It is a cop-out, though. They do start repeating the scenes to make you, and they got that ending. Does fantasy become reality? But this ending...
Yeah. I said, come on now. It's an insult to the audience, if you ask me.
I think it's a lazy way out as well. I mean, depending on not even depending on the film. You're right. It is a lazy way out. Kara, would you agree, or how do you feel about the whole "it's all a dream" ending that we get in this movie?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of does just. Even though the film wasn't that great, you've still got this buildup or these scenes here and there, and it's kind of like when you're shaking up a soda expecting to spray it in someone's face, and that you open it up to discover the thing was flat. It was all for nothing.
That's a great analogy.
That was pretty good.
That is great. That is what this film kind of does. And, they do have you repeating the scenes at the end to make you think, well, was he being prophetic in his dream or whatnot? I'm like, no, they just didn't know how to end it. They either ran out of money or they were just like, it's all a dream. And then we'll reuse these scenes at the very end. And then we'll end it with, was a reality becoming a fantasy? And then I'm like, wow, way to try to, add something at the last minute to what is a not zombie film, which really resembles a zombie film quite a bit. And yeah, it isn't really a great film as far as these films go. I've watched some Italian horror as well, and it's been done better earlier and later, and it felt like they were kind of getting in on the zombie craze. I mean, come on, when they release it in the US, they call it City of the Walking Dead.
and they fooled me with that one because I'm thinking I'm thinking that this is something to do with George A. Romero, because I'm like, oh wow, another Night of the Walking Dead, just called City of the Walking Dead.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until later. It wasn't until I put it on. I'm like, wait a minute, what the hell? Why did this looks like a Japanese movie to me? because like I said, I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about that much about Italian horror. I don't know I knew about dubbing, but that dubbing was terrible. Terrible, and it just felt like I was watching a very bad Japanese movie. Doing the dubbing, it was terrible.
Reminds you of the old kung fu movies, like
yeah.
I used to watch on midnight on, I think it was Friday nights. They had Kung Fu Theater on when we used to have independent TV stations, and they used to have the old Kung Fu films I used to watch. Yeah, the dubbing was about that bad.
Well, for me, it was the old UHF channels.
Yep.
That would show the Kung Fu pictures.
Oh yeah, that's for us too. Yeah, that's what was on the UHF channel quite a bit. So I guess I should ask if this film didn't quite sit well with you. What is one of your more enjoyable Italian horror films? I'll start with you, Cara. What would you say is one of your more enjoyable Italian horror films? Not this one, obviously.
I mean, this one's at least good as a time killer film. If you have nothing else better to do, I'll give it that. But the first one, at least the first Italian zombie film I ever watched was Zombie, so it's kind of hard not to be spoiled off of that one.
Yeah, when you start there, it's kind of tough. Lamont, how about you?
It's the same Zombie. Because it's funny because when it got released in theaters, but I went to go see it, everyone just assumed it was something similar to Dawn of the Dead. Dawn of the Dead just came out. So you have this zombie picture come out because it was known as Zombie, not the Z-O. I think it was spelled Z-O-M-B-I.
Yeah.
And they actually spelled the word zombie. So everyone just assumed it was George A. Romero's picture. But it wasn't, so it was a nice film for good practical effects. You never forget the splinter in the eye scene.
Oof, yeah.
And of course the ending was believable in this one.
more believable than in Nightmare City, that's for sure. Did you have anything that you maybe wanted to talk about, or a topic for this film that we didn't touch on yet tonight?
I'm sorry, that again. I'm sorry.
Oh, did you have a topic or a scene or something that we may not have discussed yet tonight that you maybe wanted to talk about with Nightmare City?
No, I think we eviscerated this film enough.
I like that, eviscerate.
Eviscerate's a good word, yeah. It's not really a deep film, but for the time that they were making it or what, they were cashing in on the zombie craze. I mean,
that's what they were doing. It's like, hey, that's what most. I mean, like I said, when you have, it's just like when after The Exorcist come out, all of a sudden you have all these possession films.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, and in the 50s, I mean, Hollywood's been doing this for ages with horror films, especially. I mean, in the 50s, we mentioned the monster films. How many monster films came out? I mean, last year. Go ahead.
and not just not with the not just I don't know if they were trying to copy Godzilla or not, but like I said, you have this monster, that monster, this monster, that monster. It's like, good, what are you guys doing?
It's so Hollywood has been doing this forever, and we've got it now. I mean, with the superhero genre, but you also got it with the horror genre. I mean, you get one movie that hits it big, like when Saw came out, and look at how many films tried to replicate the Saw type formula of elaborate ways to kill people or Final Destination. I mean, it's that trend of, oh, this is hot, we got to do something like this now.
And
And
don't forget the Scream clones.
yeah. Oh God, the Scream clones. Look at how meta we can be. Oh yeah, it's so. And this one is no different at cashing in on the zombie craze in the horror genre. And it did come out in '80, so it's just the start of where you really start rolling into the '80s horror films. I mean, just like we had the start of the slasher films with our classic slashers. Then everybody was doing slasher films. I mean, The Burning, I always remember, which I think actually came before. Didn't The Burning come before Friday the 13th, or was it after?
Yeah, actually, I think it came out before Friday the 13th Part 2. They almost came out at the same time.
That's right. So, but I mean, so yeah, I mean, Hollywood has that trend. It's just that when they do that and they try to jump on that bandwagon, you get films like this one, Nightmare City, which, yeah, I think we'll wrap it up here tonight. We'll just go down the line. I think people will know what our guests are going to say, but why don't we go down the line? Just give your final thought, and if you would recommend this to someone who is, say, into the zombie films and looking for, maybe an older school zombie film. So, Kara, we'll start with you. What's kind of your final thought with Nightmare City, and would you recommend it?
I'd say in general, if you like older films, even just cheesy zombie films, I'd say go for it. Even if you're not looking for a time killer or a strong plot, it's still something you can just, like Lamont said, you can just sit down, laugh, have fun with it. You don't really have to take it too serious. So I think if you go into it with the right mindset, it can be an enjoyable watch.
Mm-hmm. And Lamont, how about you? Your final thought, and would you recommend it?
Yeah, it's like this. If you're into old school horror, or you're into zombie pictures, and you don't take this seriously, you take it for what it is, you can just get a good laugh at it, and that'll be it. Yeah, so that's what basically you will want to watch this picture for.
Yeah, and I would agree, and I think Kara put it best. It's one of those background movies where you could put it on the background, and while you're maybe doing something else and you're watching it, you're going, "Oh, okay, that's what's going on." It's not an engrossing film. If you're a fan of looking for early Italian zombie films, you can put it on your list and just chuckle. Just realize you're not going to get a zombie movie. And yes, I know these aren't zombies technically according to the description, but come on, we know what they were going for. And if you do want to see what they did with the first zombies, well, then you may want to check this out as well. So we'll wrap it up for the night. And this is the point now where I give my fantastic guests the license to shill, to where they can tell you where you can find their stuff at. So, Kara, why don't you go ahead first, and where can they find you at?
I've been on a hiatus. I'm working on coming back, but I'm over at Horror Retrospective on YouTube. So just basically youtube.com/horror retrospective. You can probably catch me a little more actively over at my Twitter at retro_horrors. And I post a bunch of little random stuff over there as well.
Awesome. Great stuff. Yeah, I was checking out some of your reviews, and I love the fact that you covered End of Days with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like, hey, someone else watched that movie. And Lamont, sir, where can they find your stuff at?
Once again, I'm on YouTube at youtube.com/the Horror Miser Money G. I just did a review of Leprechaun Origins. We'll get to that. I'll be doing a review of Glass. I will be going seeing that this week, and I'll have a review of that. And I'm also working on a review of a movie I just saw called Hostel. Now, keep in mind, this is not Hostel. This is Hostel. It's a post-apocalyptic film about a girl who gets into a crash and unfortunately has to survive a nightmare by one of the creatures that come out to attack, that come out at night. It was a pretty good film.
Nice.
Didn't like the ending.
It's kind of like me with The Escape Room. It was an all right film. I didn't like the ending.
Oh.
I know how you felt about it, but
Yeah, it's like it's just like what the writers were thinking. It's like, okay, we want to make a sequel because that's what we're doing this for, but you couldn't end it like that. It's like they were trying to see how much shit they could throw up on the wall, make it see how much it would stick. It's like, come on, guys, you can do better than that.
Yeah, unfortunately, we all know that's a trend of many a horror film, to where you would like where it ended to end, but it didn't. There's 5 minutes more just so that they could possibly.
It was 5 minutes too long. That was unnecessary.
They did not need that last 5 minutes. So I want to thank you both again for your time. I hope you enjoyed listening to our discussion on this Nightmare City. Please check out the links for both Lamont and Kara. I will put links in the body of this of the page for this podcast, as well as they will have links on our friends of Special Mark Productions website as well, so you can find it there. So now I think let's just say good night, everyone.
Buenas noches.
Nice. Hey, all my friends out there looking for more spoiler room goodness? Then why don't you check out our brand new Patreon page, patreon.com/specialmarkproductions, where you can get access to exclusive spoiler room episodes and a whole lot more. You can also find us on Facebook groups at SMPRD and on to Twitter at SpecialMarkPro. Let your voice be heard and let us know what you would like to see in the spoiler room, as well as just how we're doing in general. We appreciate your support, and remember, in the spoiler room, the conversation is fresh, but we do spoil the movies.